Hello again, Sherlynn here, and it's time to read Book 2 from the Book of Dragons by Edith Nesbit. This second book is entitled Uncle James, or The Purple Stranger. So, shall we get started? The princess and the gardener's boy were playing in the backyard. "What will you do when you grow up, princess?" asked the gardener's boy. "I should like to marry you, Tom," said the princess. "Would you mind?" "No," said the gardener's boy, "I shouldn't mind much. I'll marry you if you like, if I have time." For the gardener's boy meant, as soon as he was grown up, to be a general and a poet and a prime minister and an admiral and a civil engineer. Meanwhile, he was top of all of his classes at school and tip-top of the geography class. As for the Princess Marianne, she was a very good little girl, and everyone loved her. She was always kind and polite, even to her Uncle James and to other people whom she did not like very much, and though she was not very clever for a princess, she always tried to do her lessons. Even if you know perfectly well that you can't do your lessons, you may as well try, and sometimes you find that by some fortunate accident they really are done. Then the princess had a truly good heart. She was always kind to her pets. She never slapped her hippopotamus when it broke her dolls in its playful gambols, and she never forgot to feed her rhinoceroses in their little hutch in the backyard. Her elephant was devoted to her, and sometimes Marianne made her nurse quite cross by smuggling the dear little thing up to bed with her and letting it go to sleep with its long trunk laid lovingly across her throat and its pretty head cuddled under the royal right ear. When the princess had been good all through the week, for like all real, live, nice children, she was sometimes naughty, but never bad, Nurse would allow her to ask her little friends to come on Wednesday morning early and spend the day, because Wednesday is the end of the week in that country. Then in the afternoon, when all the little dukes and duchesses and marquises and countesses had finished their rice pudding and had had their hands and faces washed after it, Nurse would say, "Now, my dears, what would you like to do this afternoon?" as if she did not know. And the answer would always be the same. "Oh, do let's go to the zoological gardens and ride on the big guinea pig and feed the rabbits and hear the dormouse asleep." So their pinafores were taken off and they all went to the zoological gardens, where 20 of them could ride at a time on the guinea pig, and where even the little ones could feed the great rabbits, if some grown-up person were kind enough to lift them up for the purpose. There was always some such person, because in Rotundia everybody was kind, except one. Now that you have read as far as this, you know, of course, that the Kingdom of Rotundia was a very remarkable place. And if you are a thoughtful child, as of course you are, you will not need me to tell you what was the most remarkable thing about it. But in case you are not a thoughtful child, and it is just possible, of course, that you are not, I will tell you at once what that most remarkable thing was. All the animals were the wrong sizes. And this is how it happened. In olden times, when all our world was just loose earth and air and fire and water mixed up anyhow like a pudding and spinning around like mad, trying to get the different things to settle into their proper places, a round piece of earth got loose and went spinning away by itself across the water, which was just beginning to try to get spread out smooth into a real sea. And as the great round piece of earth flew away, Going around and around as hard as it could, it met a long piece of hard rock that had got loose from another part of the puddingy mixture, and the rock was so hard and was going so fast that it ran its point through the round piece of earth and stuck out on the other side of it, so that the two together were like a very, very much too big spinning top. I am afraid all this is very dull, but you know geography is never quite lively, and after all, I must give you a little information, even in a fairy tale, like the powder in jam. Well, when the pointed rock smashed into the round bit of earth, the shock was so great that it set them spinning together through the air, which was just getting into its proper place, like all the rest of the things. Only, as luck would have it, they forgot which way around they had been going and began to spin around the wrong way. Presently, center of gravity, a great giant who was managing the whole business, woke up in the middle of the earth and began to grumble. "Hurry up," he said. "Come down and lie still, can't you?" So the rock with the round piece of earth fell into the sea, and the point of the rock went into a hole that just fitted it in the stony sea bottom. And there it spun around the wrong way 7 times, then lay still. And that round piece of land became, after millions of years, the Kingdom of Rotundia. This is the end of the geography lesson. And now for just a little natural history, so that we may not feel that we are quite wasting our time. Of course, the consequence of the island having spun around the wrong way was that when the animals began to grow on the island, they all grew the wrong sizes. The guinea pig, as you know, was as big as our elephants, and the elephant, dear little pet, was the size of the silly, tiny, black and tan dogs that ladies carry sometimes in their muffs. The rabbits were about the size of our rhinoceroses, and all about the wild parts of the island they had made their burrows as big as railway tunnels. The dormouse, of course, was the biggest of all creatures. I can't tell you how big he was. Even if you think of elephants, it will not help you at all. Luckily, there was only one of him, and he was always asleep. Otherwise, I don't think the Rotundians could have borne with him. As it was, they made him a house, and it saved the expense of a brass band, because no band could possibly have been heard when the dormouse was talking in his sleep. The men and women and children in this wonderful island were quite the right size, because their ancestors had come over with the conqueror long after the island had settled down and the animals grown on it. Now, the natural history lesson is over. And if you have been attending, you know more about Rotundia than anyone there did, except 3 people. The Lord Chief Schoolmaster, the princess's uncle, who was a magician and knew everything without learning it, and Tom, the gardener's son. Tom had learned more at school than anyone else because he wished to take a prize. The prize offered by the Lord Chief Schoolmaster was a history of Rotundia, beautifully bound with the royal arms on the back. But after that day, when the princess said she meant to marry Tom, the gardener's boy thought it over, and he decided that the best prize in the world would be the princess. And this was the prize Tom meant to take. And when you are a gardener's son and have decided to marry a princess, you will find that the more you learn at school, the better. The princess always played with Tom on the days when the little dukes and marquises did not come to tea. And when he told her he was almost sure of the first prize, she clapped her hands and said, "Dear Tom, dear, good, clever Tom, you deserve all the prizes. And I will give you my pet elephant, and you can keep him till we're married." The pet elephant was called Fido, and the gardener's son took him away in his coat pocket. He was the dearest little elephant you ever saw, about 6 inches long, but he was very, very wise. He could not have been wiser if he had been a mile high. He lay down comfortably in Tom's pocket, and when Tom put in his hand, Fido curled his little trunk around Tom's fingers with an affectionate confidence that made the boy's heart warm to his new little pet. What with the elephant and the princess's affection and the knowledge that the very next day he would receive the history of Rotundia, beautifully bound, with the royal arms on the cover, Tom could hardly sleep a wink. And besides, the dog did bark so terribly. There was only one dog in Rotundia. The kingdom could not afford to keep more than one. He was a Mexican lapdog of the kind that in most parts of the world only measured 7 inches from the end of his dear little nose to the tip of his darling tail. But in Rotundia he was bigger than I can possibly expect you to believe. And when he barked, his bark was so large that it filled up all the night and left no room for sleep or dreams or polite conversation or anything else at all. He never barked at things that went on in the island. He was too large-minded for that. But when ships went blundering by in the dark, tumbling over the rocks at the end of the island, he would bark once or twice, just to let the ships know that they couldn't come playing about there just as they liked. But on this particular night, he barked and barked and barked. And the princess said, "Oh dear, I wish he wouldn't. I am so sleepy." And Tom said to himself, "I wonder whatever is the matter. As soon as it's light, I'll go and see." So when it began to be pretty pink and yellow daylight, Tom got up and went out. And all the time the Mexican lapdog barked so that the houses shook and the tiles of the roof of the palace rattled like milk cans in a cart whose horse is frisky. "I'll go to the pillar," thought Tom as he went through the town. The pillar, of course, was the top of the piece of rock that had stuck itself through Rotundia millions of years before and made it spin around the wrong way. It was quite in the middle of the island and stuck up ever so far, and when you were at the top you could see a great deal farther than when you were not. As Tom went out from the town and across the downs, he thought what a pretty sight it was to see the rabbits in the bright dewy morning, frisking with their young ones by the mouths of their burrows. He did not go very near the rabbits, of course, because when a rabbit of that size is at play, it does not always look where it is going, and it might easily have crushed Tom with its foot. And then it would have been very sorry afterward. And Tom was a kind boy and would not have liked to make even a rabbit unhappy. Earwigs in our country often get out of the way when they think you are going to walk on them. They too have kind hearts. They would not like you to be sorry afterward. So Tom went on, looking at the rabbits and watching the morning grow more red and golden. And the Mexican lapdog barked all the time till the church bells tinkled and the chimney of the apple factory rocked again. But when Tom got to the pillar, he saw that he would not need to climb to the top to find out what the dog was barking at. For there, by the pillar, lay a very large purple dragon. His wings were like old purple umbrellas that have been very much rained on, and his head was large and bald like the top of a purple toadstool, and his tail, which was purple too, was very, very, very long, and thin and tight like the lash of a carriage whip. It was licking one of its purple umbrella-y wings, and every now and then it moaned and leaned its head back against the rocky pillar as though it felt faint. Tom saw at once what had happened. A flight of purple dragons must have crossed the island in the night, and this poor one must have knocked its wing and broken it against the pillar. Everyone is kind to everyone in Rotundia, and Tom was not afraid of the dragon, although he had never spoken to one before. He had often watched them flying across the sea, but he had never expected to get to know one personally. So now he said, "I am afraid you don't feel quite well." The dragon shook his large purple head. He could not speak, but like all other animals, he could understand well enough when he liked. "Can I get you anything?" asked Tom politely. The dragon opened his purple eyes with an inquiring smile. "A bun or two now," said Tom coaxingly. "There's a beautiful bun tree quite close." The dragon opened a great purple mouth and licked his purple lips. So Tom ran and shook the bun tree, and soon came back with an armful of fresh currant buns. And as he came, he picked a few of the bath kind, which grow on the low bushes near the pillar. Because, of course, another consequence of the island's having spun the wrong way is that all the things we have to make, buns and cakes and shortbread, grow on trees and bushes. But in Rotundia, they have to make their cauliflowers and cabbages and carrots and apples and onions, just as our cooks make puddings and turnovers. Tom gave all the buns to the dragon, saying, "Here, try to eat a little. You'll soon feel much better." The dragon ate up the buns, nodded rather ungraciously, and began to lick his wing again. So Tom left him and went back to the town with the news, and everyone was so excited at the real live dragons being on the island, a thing that had never happened before, that they all went out to look at it instead of going to the prize giving, and the Lord Chief Schoolmaster went with the rest. Now, he had Tom's prize, the history of Rotundia, in his pocket, the one bound in calf with the royal arms on the cover, and it happened to drop out. And the dragon ate it! So Tom never got the prize after all. But the dragon, when he had gotten it, did not like it. "Oh, perhaps it's all for the best," said Tom. "I might not have liked that prize either if I had gotten it." It happened to be a Wednesday, so when the princess's friends were asked what they would like to do, all the little dukes and marquises and earls said, "Let's go see the dragon." But the little duchesses and marchionesses and countesses said they were afraid. Then Princess Marianne spoke up royally and said, "Don't be silly, because it's only in fairy stories and histories of England and things like that people are unkind and want to hurt each other. In Rotundia, everyone is kind, and no one has anything to be afraid of unless they're naughty, and then we know it's for our own good. Let's all go and see the dragon. We might take him some acid drops." So they went, and all the titled children took it in turns to feed the dragon with acid drops, and he seemed pleased and flattered and wagged as much of his purple tail as he could get at conveniently, for it was a very, very long tail indeed. But when it came to the princess's turn to give an acid drop to the dragon, he smiled a very wide smile and wagged his tail to the very last long inch of it, as if to say, "Oh, you nice, kind, pretty little princess." But deep down, in his wicked, purple heart, he was saying, "Oh, you nice, fat, pretty little princess. I should like to eat you instead of these silly acid drops." But of course nobody heard him except the princess's uncle, and he was a magician and accustomed to listening at doors. It was part of his trade. We're going to stop there for the end of episode 1. So, I tell you, until we meet again for the episode 2 of book 2 of Uncle James or the Purple Stranger, I bid you good day